Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Acharya Sadhana Shri Srimad Divine Grace Sri Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Ananta Puri Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Thakur Ki Jai Prem Sagar Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudha Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Vrinda Ki Jai Vrindavan Ki Jai Mathura Dham Ki Jai Navitam Ki Jai Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai Gangomai Ki Jai Yamuna Mai Ki Jai Tulasi Devi Ki Jai Bhakti Devi Ki Jai Samaveda Bhaktandi Ki Jai Gauda Pramanandi. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to the assembly devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Vastaya Gitane Srimad Bhakti Vedanta Swami Janane Namaste Saraswati Devi Namo. So we continue with this most wonderful transcendental diary by Hari Prabhu, and we are reading about Prabhupada's being in Vrindavan Dham. He is not, however, remaining entirely mute. For the second time in 2 months, he spoke at length today to express his dissatisfaction with the number of women, children, and householders staying here at the temple grounds. He is not at all pleased with the current situation. Despite the acquisition in May of Tapadia House behind the Fogel Ashram and Prabhupada's repeated directives that they live there, a number of women and children are still occupying rooms in the guest house, and this is causing a great disturbance. Prabhupada has several times complained about the noise, and at lunchtime today he sent me out to knock on people's doors with request that they keep the children quiet. Shaking his head with concern, he asked me how would it be possible for our guest house to be a success when so many screaming children are there all day. If a respectable gentleman comes, he will not be able to find any peace and quiet, although this is supposed to be a guest house, he told me. Prabhupada has already ordered that some of the rooms in the Gurukula building be completed early so that all the women and children can be moved there. I do not want to send anyone away, he said, but they may not come here and cause disturbance. He's especially concerned about the problem of single women coming here and attracting men. This is a great offense, he said. Any sex life in Vrindavan is a great offense. If they have sex desire, they should be tactfully asked to leave. Otherwise, those who have sex in the dham become these monkeys, turtles, dogs, and hogs. Single women means with sex desire. They should not come to Vrindavan to live. They should not make a show of spiritual life by living in Vrindavan and then simply looking for some man. Sex life is not spiritual life. Spiritual life is tapasya. Sex life is material one. Is material only. One with sex desire should not come to Vrindavan. It is simply for tapasya. Married couples must live as vanaprastha. If anyone wants to come to live on Vrindavan, they should sign a certificate saying that now they are finished with sex for good. Hare Krishna. So, Bhagavad speaking strongly, because actually, like he says, Vrindavan should be a very peaceful place. And if you hear the screaming of children all day, it's very difficult to maintain peace. And Prabhupada mentions here, not that they are thrown out or something like that, but everyone needs a place according to his mentality or according to his ashram. So Prabhupada also says here that in Vrindavan, this is supposed to be a place of tapasya. Tapasya. Austerity. Unless there's austerity, how can you concentrate on spiritual subject matters? So, I wanted to say something. Anyway. Any questions regarding this? What we just read? Yeah, bitte.
The Indians, they are always loud, I think. Also nowadays,
Yes.
I mean, even in Vrindavan, even there are no crying kids. There are so much.
Noise.
The Indians, cars.
They especially noisy. Yeah. They don't seem to talk slowly or peacefully, but they always oh yeah, I hope this is not falling. Anyway,
was it the same?
I'm not offending the Indians. Sorry?
Was it the same in the time of Srila Prabhupada?
Yeah, of course. This is the nature of the Indians. Just like in Mayapur. Also, when you stay there and your neighbors are Indians, oi, oi, oi. Of course, we always, as sannyasi, we always travel with tapones, what is that? Yeah, with earplugs, earplugs. We always need earplugs. Also, traveling is very noisy. The airplanes are normally extremely noisy. Of course, if somebody flies only once in a while, he doesn't notice. But if you fly more, it's so noisy. Yeah. So anyway, so noise should be avoided in the holy places. And you see Prabhupada was very upset, actually. Yeah? He was upset. And also Prabhupada was very, very sensitive about bashing doors. I mentioned that several times here, that some devotees have the custom of, instead of closing the door, they just, That's not the way. If Prabhupada would be around, he would be very molested by this, very disturbed. Prabhupada used to say, who is this fool and rascal who's smashing the door? Not considering at all who it was. Fools and rascals. These are two expressions that Prabhupada used very often, actually. Fools and rascals. Only fools and rascals cannot appreciate. Only fools and rascals cannot understand. Fools and rascals make noise like that. Yeah. And I remember when Prabhupada used to come to a temple, this was one of the things that we had to do. Be very quiet. The children would all be taken away to some other place. Yeah. Prabhupada was very, very sensitive about that. Yeah. And we would speak like, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Yeah. Nobody was screaming or kind of thing. Yeah. When that happened, somebody came and Prabhu, 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 Prabhupada. And this way we became very Krishna, very Prabhupada conscious when Prabhupada was there. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So the temple is also a holy place.
Sorry?
This temple is also a holy place. It should be considered.
Yes. But of course, we're preaching. No? This is preaching. Prabhupada used to say that the temples should be places to preach. Whereas living should not be here. Family life and all that. They should, Prabhupada wanted, that was his desire, that all the grihasthas has to live on the farm. It's the ideal place for grihastas. Also for the children, it's ideal. Yeah. There's so much noise in the cities, and so much distraction, and so much nonsense. Yeah? Whereas when you live in the community of devotees, you just get accustomed to a certain mood. You know? Also the children, they see the elders, chanting and walking around, and hardly any pajalpa. Oi. Yeah, everything is focused. And deity worship. Yeah, and the children should also learn how to worship the deities. I mean, have their own deities. Even. And that's the way we should educate our children. Yeah. Like when I did the program at what was the name of that devotee? Om Prakash. Yeah, Om Prakash. Yeah. You could see that his daughters were very, very devotee. So even though the elder daughter started talking about how difficult it is for devotees our devotee children to go to school and have all this association with kami children and all that. But later on it came out, wasn't it? It came out that actually she had a very good influence on her friends. Yeah, they took a trip to London, I don't know what, maybe with school or something. And also she took her friends to the temple. Temple outside in Radlett. And all her friends were very impressed. Yeah? That's what we have to learn. How to do, with our preaching, we should make people positive about Krishna consciousness. Like for example, somebody's eating prasadam and you say, you like it? And if the person says, yeah, very much, incredible, yeah, it makes another step forward. Besides purification, yeah, they start thinking positively about the whole thing. Of course, you also have to behave properly. We should avoid all these things. The problem, anyway, in public. Srila Prabhupada, okay, yeah, noch was.
I have a question.
But?
No, but. I have a question regarding this topic you mentioned. I think also Prabhupada was talking about gurukuls. So, for future parents, it's sometimes difficult to understand, okay, what to do with the children. For example, we are now living here in the Western world, but there are some devotees, for example, who send their kids to Mayapur, to Gurukul. But you hear also that...
I don't know if it's still happening.
There are some devotees, they're moving to
they're moving to Mayapur, but don't send their children alone.
No,
this was in the beginning. And this created a lot of trouble. Yeah.
No, they move with the family.
Yeah.
So, but you hear different things. Sometimes children grow better in the Western world, like this example with the kids of Om Prakash. Even they grow here, but somehow they become very Krishna consciousness, and they inspire others also. But sometimes you hear devotees grow in Mayapur, but they become so distracted, or many things happen to them.
In Mayapur?
Yeah, in Gurukuls in general, I mean, the history shows also abuses, or they become distracted and take drugs or this or that. So how to figure out what is for your kid the best thing? Either send the kid to the Gurukul, or better grow it here. I mean, there are different.
In South America, we have a lot of homeschooling. In Germany, you're not allowed to have homeschooling, but there normally there's one lady and all the other householders will bring their kids, and they just amongst the devotees. Yeah. And once a year they have to go, or twice a year they have to go and make their official tests under the government regulations. Yeah, anyway, so yeah, it's a problem. It's a problem. And this you have to figure, well, we have a lot of devotees with experience by now. In the beginning, there was so much speculation and so many problems and scandals, and now devotees have become a little more, experienced. They have gone through so many things, and so you can learn from these devotees with experience. Yeah, but
how about encouraging people to eat or to offer the food? I mean, in general, when they're cooking themselves, because sometimes it's maybe a little bit difficult just to eat from the temple, because
how did you get to prasadam now?
Because it was
the time is approaching, huh?
Vrindavan is a proper place for ISKCON devotees, Grihastha devotees, to do Garbhadana samskara?
No. According to what Prabhupada said here. I was always, sometimes I mentioned that devotees go to Vrindavan to get married. That's completely contradictory to the mood of the Goswamis. It's the mood of the Goswamis in Vrindavan. Garbhadana, sanskar, marriage ceremonies and all that. Nothing to do with Vrindavan. But it's a little difficult to understand for devotees, for younger devotees. This mood. And that's why Prabhupada was insisting that unmarried ladies shouldn't go there. Of course, nowadays it's different. As long as they're organized properly, well, Hare Krishna. Prabhupada said something very direct. He says when they go, they're not married, they have nobody to fix their mind on, then automatically start looking at the boys, the brahmacharis and all that, and just create a disturbance. That's what it is. It's like that. Just like sometimes there's a group of boys, no? And all of a sudden a young, beautiful girl appears, and they've been really friends and cooperating very nicely, but as soon as a girl appears, there's this conflict amongst the boys. Everyone wants to show up, that kind of, here I am. I play the mridanga, very incredible. Look, no. Yeah, sorry. Muscles, no, yeah. That's even sometimes happens when there's kirtan. Somebody is very agitated by this mood. He starts playing kirtan, mridanga or anything, like just to show up, just to call the attention of who? What do you think?
Himself.
Yeah, this is something that it's a very broad theme, kind of. But basically, what's happening in the material world is, this is what's nodding us to the cycle of birth and death. You know this verse? Yeah. The attraction between the different, Geschlechter. What is that in English?
Gender.
Huh? Genders. Yeah. Yeah. This is what binds us to the material world. That's why in Vedic culture, this was organized very nicely. In the beginning, during education, there was no mixing of the sexes. Yeah. And then only a quarter, practically, in life, one was allowed to live a family life. And then again, vanaprastha. No more sex relations. The children were normally grown up. They could lead their own life. The parents didn't have to care, to continue taking care of them anymore. They were more independent. And they could again dedicate themselves to their spiritual life. Of course, it's difficult when you haven't experienced it before. That's why it's important that first you have the experience of the bliss of spiritual life. This experience is very important. And then doing household life, you always remember, wow. Sometimes I travel and I meet devotees who have plenty of experience. And many times I say, Maharaj, this was the best time of our life. We were brahmacharis and going Sankirtan. Yeah. Yeah, and this memory is there, you know. So once you're in the position of augmenting, how you say, increasing your spiritual life again, you do it based on that experience from before. Yeah. There's another thing that Prabhupada once said, that these divisions, no, these ashrams, the Brahmins were supposed to pass the 4 ashrams. Brahmachari, Grihastha, Vanaprastha, and Sannyas. Then the Kshatriyas will come up to Vanaprastha, no Sannyas. There's a nice example of the Pandavas. Remember, when the Pandavas renounced everything, they were still traveling with Draupadi. She was part of the group. They were traveling to the north. And this was actually a process. Once you fall dead on that walk, okay, Hare Krishna. Then the Vaishyas are supposed to do education and household life. And the Shudras only household life. Anyway, it's not that important. Prabhupada didn't emphasize it so much. For us, the most important thing is devotional service. And we accept things that are favorable and we reject everything that is not favorable. So it also helps to lead a proper Grihastha life, a proper Brahmachari life. When Prabhupada came to the West, there were so many young girls coming to the temple. And we started saying that these are brahmacharinis. The brahmacharinis. You can't find that term anywhere in the Shastra, brahmacharini. Because a woman, according to Vedic standard, is supposed to be married. They marry at a very early age. I don't know if I remember properly, but I think Prabhupada's wife was 12 years old when she got married to Prabhupada. Yeah.
11.
Huh?
Even 11.
11, yeah, even younger, 11 years old. Yeah. And there was a completely different atmosphere. Yeah. Everything was peaceful. They had their minds fixed on one another, and they were occupied in the proper way. They were accepting their tradition and their rules and regulations. This was it. And still we can see this, part of it, of this culture. All these Indian boys who are coming, their parents are planning their marriage. And many of them, the parents already have found some proper girl for them to get married. That's why the parents are always pushing, come back, you finished, no, please come back. That means we have a girl for you to get married. Yeah. Srila Prabhupada. Okay, sorry for extending it so much. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. English or Deutsch? English oder Deutsch? English? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 29, or what verse is it?
29, 20,
yeah. So we continue With the fourth canto, chapter 31, Narada instructs the Pachetas. Vidura uvacha Soyam madhyamaha yogin Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go harihi Vidura uvacha Soyam madhyamaha yogin Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go harihi Vidura uvacha Swayam Mahayogi Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go hari
Vidura uvacha
Yogin Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go harihi
Vidura uvacha Soyam adya mahayogin
Bhavata karunatmana
Darshitas tamasa
paro
Yatra kinchana go hari
Vidura uvacha
Swayam mahayogin Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go harihi.
Ladies.
Vidura uvacha
Soyam mahayogin Bhavata karunatmana Darshitas tamasa paro Yatra kinchana go hari Vidura uvacha Soyam mahayogin Vidura uvacha. Vidura said, Sa, that, I am, this, Adya, today, Mahayogin, O great mystic, Bhavata, by you, Karuna Atmana, most merciful, Darshita, I have been shown, Tamasa, of the darkness, Para, the other side, Yatra, where, Akinchanaga, approachable by the material free. Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Translation. Sri Vidura said, O great mystic, O greatest of all devotees, by your causeless mercy I have been shown the path of liberation from this world of darkness. By following this path, a person liberated from the material world can return home, back to Godhead. Purport of Srila Prabhupada. This material world is called tama, dark, and the spiritual world is called light. The Vedas enjoin that everyone should try to get out of the darkness and go to the kingdom of light. Information of that kingdom of light can be attained through the mercy of a self-realized soul. One also has to get rid of all material desires. As soon as one frees himself from material desires and associates with a liberated person, the path back home, back to Godhead, is clear. So this is coming to an end, this volume of the Bhagavatam, and there's only very short purports. No. Anyway, so here again we hear from Viduta and Maitreya. And Viduta is glorifying his spiritual master. He feels very grateful for having him opened his eyes, come from the stage of darkness and ignorance to the platform of enlightenment, of light. Prabhupada gives a nice example here, says, the spiritual world is light and the material world is darkness. Tamo means darkness. Tamoguna. We know from Bhagavad Gita there are three modes: the mode of goodness, the mode of passion, and the mode of ignorance. And one has to come out from this mode, free from the influence of the mode of ignorance, and come up to the mode of goodness. And that's actually possible. That's actually possible. In this age, it's possible, even though it seems that, everything is so degraded. By the extraordinary mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, it's possible. Just like it's mentioned here, when you associate with a great soul, these things become obvious. You can see things, understand things properly. Just like Prabhupada. In the beginning, he came into a very special atmosphere, hippie mood actually. He was surrounded by hippies. And he was telling them they should not eat meat. Wow. They shouldn't take any drugs, no more LSD, no more free love. They were propagating that. That was part of it. Free love without any restrictions, and no gambling. Well, most of the hippies had no money, so they couldn't go gamble very much. But because Prabhupada said that, he was so convinced, he was so pure, that it was accepted. From one day to the other, all of a sudden, one found oneself following the principles. And by maintaining or following in the line of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, especially chanting Hare Krishna, taking refuge in the holy names of God, everything started to become possible. And Prabhupada even gave us this saying, the word impossible only exists in the dictionary, the fools and rascals. Again, fools and rascals. Yeah, this was Prabhupada's consciousness. Yeah. With Krishna, everything is possible. Without Krishna, there's only trouble. So the devotees in the beginning, they experience this incredibly blissful mood, by being with Srila Prabhupada and just looking at Prabhupada, just observing Prabhupada was so convincing. Even when Prabhupada didn't say a word. Yeah. I remember I have on the computer, I have some videos of Prabhupada, and one video is Prabhupada doesn't say a word. He's just sitting. And you look at this and you can't take your look off Prabhupada. Why is this? Because Prabhupada was completely on the transcendental platform. He was beyond the modes of material nature. Devotees had never seen a person like that. Just like Prabhupada said, the conditioned soul has 4 defects. He has limited senses. On the basis of his limited senses, he undergoes all kinds of illusions. What was it? The next one? Oh, yeah, limited senses, illusion.
Mistakes.
Huh?
One makes mistakes.
Yeah, mistakes, thank you. Yeah, makes mistakes. All the time you're making mistakes. Prabhupada didn't make a mistake. Can you imagine? Wow. Everything was based on Krishna consciousness. Vasudha Prabhupada. And then the next defect also of the conditioned soul is the cheating propensity. Everyone was to impose oneself as important, intelligent, incredible. Yeah. Well, that's a complete illusion. So, but based on that also is this tendency of cheating. Everyone wants to be important, figure important. Like we mentioned this in the beginning when we read Prabhupada's books, Prabhupada's diary. We want to be important, to impress others, especially one group of people. Anyway, so this is what happens when one finds, like Prabhupada mentioned here, that one finds a pure soul. One can actually become a devotee. One can start understanding what is impossible to understand in conditioned life. One can actually have experience of spiritual life just by being with such a great soul. I just read that Maitreya was a friend of Vyasadeva. So that means they were both completely situated on the spiritual platform. Yeah. And Shukadeva Goswami is telling this, giving this information about Maitreya and Viduta. Shukadeva Goswami is the original reciter. How is it? Reciter? No, Srimad Bhagavatam. It's very interesting. Shukadeva Goswami, which will be mentioned again in the end. Shukadeva Goswami was also very, very special. He was the son of Srila Vyasadeva. And he had heard from Vyasadeva, the Srimad Bhagavatam, being situated in the womb of his mother. So after a while, he didn't want to get born. He didn't want to, he was not interested in getting born because he thought, if I'm born, I got entangled with so much nonsense. Yeah? So Vyasadeva insisted, my dear son, come out. It's time to take birth. But he refused. He stayed 16 years within the womb of his mother. So he was big. So she must have also been big. No? And because he didn't listen to his father was a contemporary of Krishna. So he asked Krishna, please Krishna, come, convince my son to be born. So Krishna came and started talking, speaking to Shukadeva Goswami within the womb. And when Krishna started speaking, he accepted, and he was born. But then it says, because he was already 16 years old, he was fully grown. And he was so detached, he just was born, got up, and started going away as he was born. That means without clothes, anything. He started walking. And his father called him, my son, come back, where are you going? And it says the only thing that came back was the echo of the voice. Yeah. And what was he looking for? He was looking for persons who would appreciate the Srimad Bhagavatam. Yeah. He had no interest in associate with anybody. And because he was not dressed, he had long hair and all this, people thought he's a lunatic. How is it in English? Yeah, lunatic. He's crazy. This person is crazy. And so he started walking and walking, and just stopped sometimes, asking the grihasthas to give him a little milk, little milk for his, food to survive. Like that. And actually, Prabhupada said when he asked the grihasthas for a little bit of milk, it was his mercy. So they would associate with him, and he would even have an opportunity to preach to them, to get them free from their illusion. So he walked, and because he was seen as a crazy man, other crazies became attracted to him. They surrounded him. And also because he had a very nice smile in his face, also young girls became attracted to him. Yeah. So he was traveling and traveling. In the meantime, Parikshit Maharaj was renouncing his kingdom and everything. You know the story of Parikshit Maharaj. So he was cursed by a Brahmin boy. This was actually the strength the Brahmins had at that time. They were so pure and so powerful that they used to, when they cursed somebody, it actually happened. And also when they gave benedictions, people were most blessed because things were actually manifesting according to their blessings. So Parikshit Maharaj, when he heard that he was supposed to leave his body in 7 days, even though he was a prince, he was a king, he was so detached. He just, in one moment, he left everything. His family, his palace, his money, the rich food and whatever comfort the kings had at that time. Can't compare this with kings nowadays. Yeah. And he just went to the beach of the Yamuna. It says, Shastra says Ganges. But Prabhupada said actually Yamuna and Ganges are the same thing. Anyway, so he went there. And this news spread all over. Even on the other planets, they heard about the renunciation of Parikshit Maharaj, who was the last member of the Kuru dynasty. Anyway, so this news spread, and from different parts of the world, great personalities came to witness the leaving of the body of this great soul, this great descendant. So they all came, they all sat, and were waiting to observe how this great soul would leave his body. Anyway, so Parikshit Maharaj also started asking them for advice, but he was not satisfied with the advice that he received. And all of a sudden they observed there was a person approaching, darker skin, dark skin, and the great sages immediately could detect, the symptoms of Mahapurush. Long arms until the knees, eyes, lotus eyes, certain, I understand English. Anyway, so they could see, that the great personality was coming. So they all got up, out of respect, and received it. And Parikshit Maharaj gave him a seat, an elevated seat. I don't know where he got it from. He was alone, there was nothing, But still it says in the Bhagavatam that he offered him an elevated seat. And he received him, and Sukadeva Swami sat there. And after the welcome, following the etiquette of receiving. Huh?
Svagata.
Yeah, anyway, so they knew, they were very educated with a different culture. They knew perfectly well how to receive guests, especially very elevated guests. And then Parikshit Maharaj with respect, paying obeisance, this and other, he presented his question. And what was the question? What is a person supposed to do who's about to leave his body, give up his body? What is he supposed to hear, chant, or glorify? What is he supposed to think? And what is he supposed to worship? These were the questions. And when Sukadeva Goswami heard this question, he became ecstatic. Because he says, these questions are just essential. And you never meet people normally who ask these kind of questions. They ask him, look, how can I make more money? How can I do this and that, get this thing and that thing going? No? So he was completely overwhelmed. He was ecstatic hearing the question of Parikshit Maharaj. And before answering this question, Sukadeva Swami started speaking about those who do not ask this question. No? That they work all day, then they sleep at night or have sex, then they get up again and work like mad, like that. No? And he was speaking about the disqualifications, no, of the ordinary people. And then he came to answer the question. He said, actually, what one is supposed to do is hear, glorify, and think of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And how? By hearing Krishna Katha. This is the process. Like I mentioned on Sunday, the most important thing, most important activity in spiritual life is hearing. And I mentioned there also that our senses are all covered. We cannot see properly without light like that. We cannot feel really all the texture, like this, of things. We cannot, our nose is also very limited. Yeah? But the ears are awake. And that's why the ears are the most important sense to hear, to learn. It's not difficult to understand. When you hear, when you hear Shastra, you start seeing Shastra. You see through the eyes of Shastra, like that. So the hearing is the most important. Just like we're now doing, Shravanam Kirtanam, hearing and chanting. So this is what happened. And then Parikshit Maharaj asked more and more questions. And Sukadeva Goswami became extremely inspired. He was completely ecstatic to have met such a person. Just like you also know, all the devotees who are preaching, to meet a person who starts asking good questions. Wow! Yeah? Like Yuvan Sankara, the stupid books. Most of the people don't want to know anything about it. Yeah? They're not ready to hear. Or they're not qualified to hear, actually. Yeah? And once you meet somebody who says, what is the purpose of life? Or what is God? Oh, no? Wow! And you can feel how Krishna inspires you from within. And sometimes, when we're preaching, we are surprised of what we're saying. We never said that. Why is this? Because Krishna, within the heart, he inspires us. Krishna knows everything perfectly. And when we meet somebody who's sincere, then Krishna inspires us. Just like Prabhupada became so inspired when he came to America. And all these young people started asking existential questions. Nobody would, just like I think I mentioned that already, but anyway, let me repeat it. At the end, when Srila Prabhupada was, shortly before he gave up his body, Tamar Krishna Maharaj was taking care of him. And Tamar Krishna wrote everything that Prabhupada did and what he said and all this. And then Prabhupada mentioned that in India, when he was there, and when he renounced and everything, it was very difficult for him to find people who are sufficiently interested in what he was preaching. Prabhupada said most of the people were just interested in politics. Politics. You know, Gandhi was very prominent at that time in India. And also, how you say, the other political leaders, they had their, yeah. And they were not interested. And Prabhupada mentioned, in this context, Prabhupada mentions that when we are in a place where nobody is interested, is not appreciating our preaching, then we should go somewhere else. And that's what Prabhupada did. He went to America. When the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta came to Europe, they had a completely different concept of preaching. They were only looking for important people, politicians. For example, in England also they had an audience with the king, yeah, and all that. So, but when Srila Prabhupada came, he started from the lowest, lowest platform, social platform in America. Yeah. He was poor, he had no money. He was completely helpless, in one sense, completely helpless. Even though Prabhupada said that he never felt that he was alone. Even though he was alone, Prabhupada mentioned that he never felt he was alone. He said, my spiritual master was always present. Interesting. My spiritual master was always present. Anyway, so when Prabhupada came to America, you know, like I mentioned many times, Krishna had arranged the scene, prepared the whole scene. And in the beginning, in America, people were thinking, you know, that this is the religion of the hippies, the hippie religion. You know? What they didn't realize is that the hippies, these young people who had given up everything in search of deeper meaning in life and all that, they were actually very, very intelligent. Very intelligent. This is real intelligence. Not how to exploit the material nature, but actually to understand what is my position, what is my, original, identity, what is God. And not only that, not just self-realization and find out what God is, but the more confidential part of spiritual life is what is the relationship between God and the individual soul. What is it that unites us, that we can actually connect to God, devotional service. And this is what Prabhupada taught us. This is what Prabhupada taught us. He was always encouraging his disciples. Somebody had an idea, and Prabhupada kind of approved of it, please do it. Yeah? And that's why the devotees were growing more and more. They became more and more Krishna conscious. So that Prabhupada in the end could delegate so much responsibilities to his disciples. In the end, Prabhupada many times said, actually my most important service is writing the books. So if you would be able to take over all these problems and all these administration and all this stuff, I could have more time for translating. Yeah, anyway, so I only read a little short text, maybe we should continue a little bit more.
Questions?
Yeah.
Can you read the end of Purpura?
Sorry?
Can you read the end of Purpura?
The end of the purport?
Yeah. Last quotation.
No. One also has to get rid of material desires. As soon as one frees himself from material desires and associates with a liberated person, the path back home, back to Godhead is clear. Is that it?
Yeah, this looks like first.
Sorry?
Looks like in the first we have to give up all material desires, then start to associate this liberated soul. Looks so. Like Maharaj Parikshit. But what about us?
You're very, very renounced. You have no home, you have no house. Going from temple to temple, begging to have 2 square meters to put on your sleeping bag. Compared with ordinary people, yeah. That's why in the beginning sometimes they wrote in the newspapers that we are sleeping on the floor, you know, and all that kind of, and they concluded this is just to be brainwashed like that, to lose one's own, how you say, independence. That's why we have to do all that. Also, vegetarianism was also one item in this. Yeah. I remember there was one in Hamburg, the first temple, no, second temple actually, Bartelstraße. There was a new Bhakti. He had been a drug addict before, but not just LSD, but these heavy stuff, you know, spritzen, shooting, we used to say. So, and she came to the temple and couldn't believe that her son was there. He wasn't taking any drugs and not even meat and all that. And she said, "Come with us. I pay your drugs, but come with us. Don't be here." No? Yeah, and the boy stayed. He stayed. Just like Giriraj Maharaj also. He was famous for this one thing. I mean, he did incredible, so much service in Mumbai. He was one of Prabhupada's devotees, more or less right-hand man in Bombay in the beginning when they opened the temple. Anyway, so he came from a millionaire family, a very rich Jewish family in America. And he was, I think, he was the only son. So his father came, you know, and he said, "Come back. I give you $1 million if you come back, you know, and leave this Krishna consciousness." But he would remain. He wouldn't accept the offer. And then he came to India. He wanted to talk to Srila Prabhupada to tell his son to come back to his family. You know? And Srila Prabhupada called Giriraj into the room. And he said, "Your father wants you to come back. So you have to decide if you want to go." You know? And the father was there waiting. And Prabhupada said, I can't do much. I can only tell him to, you know, kind of take his own decision. You know? So the father was there and he was waiting for the result of Giriraj. And Giriraj, you know, Maharaj nowadays, he said, "No, I want to stay with Srila Prabhupada." Even though his father was offering him so much. Yeah. And Prabhupada used this in India as an example in his preaching. You know, here we have, some of my disciples come from very rich families in America, and they have given up everything. And people in India could, you know, because the rupees are so important. You know? Yeah. Yeah, but this was the association with Srila Prabhupada. No? Like Giriraj Maharaj was actually always a very humble and very timid devotee. He was not one of, you know, that kind of, yeah. Even though he came from such a, high upbringing. How is it in English? No? Yeah?
Yeah, that's a pretty good way of saying it.
Yeah.
Upper class family or high upbringing.
Yeah, very intelligent. He's still there. He gives classes, also on the internet. People are very eager to hear from him because he was so much, he pleased Prabhupada so much by his service. That is the symptom of success in spiritual life. You know, that the spiritual master is satisfied. You know, when the spiritual master is satisfied, automatically there's so much, well-wishing, how you say in English? Yeah.
Blessings.
Huh?
Blessings.
Blessings, yes, that's it, the process.
Where is Giriraj Maharaj now?
Sorry?
Giriraj Maharaj.
He's in America. He had some very heavy health problems many years back. I think with his heart or something like that, but he's still there.
He was long time in Juhu, in Mumbai.
Yeah, when they started the project, and you know the story, right? The problems they had in Mumbai and all that.
Fighting.
Yeah, yeah, he was one of Prabhupada's men there. It's incredible, the problems they had in Mumbai. And he wrote a book about it, actually, Giriraj. There's a book where he tells the story of Mumbai. Yeah. Remember that? It says that at one point the owner, no, didn't want to, well, first of all, he didn't want to give the devotees, didn't want to let them keep the property that they had bought. No, they didn't finish paying actually in the end. But no, so he sent gundas. No? This is like how you say, like
Mafia, gangsters.
Gangsters. Yeah, he would send gangsters, and they would come to Mumbai to beat the devotees and get them out there and destroy the temple they had constructed. How you say, small building they had bought because there were deities. Rasa Bihari, Rasa Bihari. The deities are still there. Yeah. Yeah, and then when everything became impossible, he had a very good idea. He called one a leader of a Hindu party. A couple of years ago, he left his body. And when this person left his body, Giriraj must put some notes, remembering that man, how he had helped them. And that leader of the Hindu party, when they told him what was happening, that they were destroying the temple and this and that and kicking us out. And so he mobilized all his, he used all his influences, his power that he had, and of course he contacted important politicians. So they didn't know about it. So when they heard about that, especially from the Hindu Dharma people, they immediately changed everything, and even the police was there, and they didn't interfere. But then the police all of a sudden interfered because the politicians were pressing this issue. Yeah. It was not always that peaceful like here in Köln. Our movement went through a lot of problems, many problems, especially in India. That's why Prabhupada used to say that he had to manage himself in India. He couldn't, his disciples couldn't do much. First of all, there were strangers, and people would see them different. But when Prabhupada stepped in and Prabhupada said things in his usual style, like, like kind of strong, then they would take him serious because he was, in India they still have some respect for sadhus, and also they had seen the influence of Srila Prabhupada, that he had convinced so many Western people to Hinduism or to Krishna consciousness. This was something that in India they thought it was completely impossible. Because these people were so fallen, they were meat eaters and drugs and all these things. No culture, they had no culture in the West. So when Prabhupada brought his disciples to India, it was a sensation, great sensation. Sometimes when Prabhupada traveled with his devotees, with his World Sankirtan party, like as he used to call the group, they were going to a city in India, and they stopped everything. It was a holiday that day when the devotees appeared on the street. Yeah. And everyone wanted to see them, the Western devotees. I just saw, we saw the film, Prabhupada film, yesterday. And Malati is saying something there, that some people came to them and touched them. to see if this was paint, because they were so white. You know? Srila Prabhupada ki.
Some more questions allowed or the class is full?
Ja, klar. Wir haben noch 2 Minuten.
According to hearing.
Sorry?
According to this topic of hearing.
Yeah.
If someone cannot hear, this means you have too much material attachment.
You know, I have seen devotees who could not hear. Taub. Wie sagt man taub? Deaf. Yeah. I have seen devotees like that. And it's amazing. They're inspired. They're dancing, clapping their hands in kirtan. Yeah. Doesn't happen very often, but I saw this in different places.
But how is this working?
Don't ask me. They also have Krishna within the heart. And Krishna makes arrangements. Yeah. Inspires them.
But in the point, if we can hear properly.
So use your hearing propensity properly before you lose it. Normally when people get older, they start hearing less and less and less and less. Yeah. Chaitanya Maharaj wrote a whole article about that. You know, he was saying in the article that because in the beginning when we were young, we bash in the kartas so much, especially the big kartas, no? We have also said here, no? Yeah, and that's why as time passes, our devotees lose their hearing. Yeah? Like when I talk to older devotees, no? For example, I speak a lot to Guru Prasad Maharaj, no? And he always has to ask, what is he saying? And then you can see that, you know, by passing of time, our devotees, they, especially older devotees, they experience it. Not only the eyes, but also the ears. Yeah, so many things become diminished. But we are very fortunate because we all came to the Krishna consciousness being very young, when everything was, how I say, working properly. Yeah, it's more difficult for older people to join, even though better late than never, like Prabhupada used to say. But still, yeah, it's more difficult. Once you're accustomed to all these things that condition you in the material world, it's not possible to change very much. I had a disciple, well, he's now already also gone, and he came to Krishna consciousness very old. He was over 60 or something. Yeah? For us, it was very old. And when he came the first time to the temple, he had received a magazine. At that time in Argentina, we printed Atma Tattva, a magazine. Well, anyway, so we had this. And he received one of these magazines on the street. And he read it. He read especially the article of Srila Prabhupada. And he was so inspired that he came to the temple and wanted to talk to Prabhupada. Yeah. And he was very depressed when he heard that Prabhupada isn't anymore like that. You know? But anyway, he came and repeated, and he wanted to move into the temple. And we thought, wow, he's a little too old for a temple life. Yeah? But then we told him, no, you cannot sleep, you cannot stay overnight. So then he always came at midday. And in many parts of South America, midday is siesta time. You know? That kind of, you know, all the shops close until 5 o'clock in the afternoon because it's so hot, you know. And then there's a siesta. No, siesta means you lay down. It's religious, you know, kind of. So he came at midday, you know? And so the only devotees were doing their siesta, you know? And he also put himself down. You know? Yeah, association. You know? And then and then he moved in. Yeah. And he did so many things. He had so much experience. And he had been in the army, he had been a parachuter, how you say, no? Yeah. And he also had been in China learning this, how you say this, with the needles? Acupuncture, so many things. And he offered his service in the temples of the devotees. Then he went to Mayapur. First time he went to Mayapur. And he was so impressed. And because he had this facility of what is that? Acupuncture. So he started attending many senior devotees, sannyasis and gurus, that kind of thing. And then he became older and older. He had problems of moving, And then at that time, when you were looking on the TV, Mayapur, you see the program in the morning. They have this system. You can hear classes in Mayapur and all that. And when there was Mangal Arti, you were always on TV. You would always see Murari there, going up the stairs and getting the lamp and passing around, even though he could hardly walk anymore. Yeah. And then he left his body at Mayapur. Had a big ceremony, for him. I mean, this throwing of the ashes into the Ganges. There's a whole ceremony they do there. Yeah. Anyway, this is very rare that older people are. Of course, now we're also becoming older and older. But we started differently. That's why Prahlad Maharaj is saying that when his boyfriend, his friends said, Prahlad, this is for older people, what you're telling us. This is for older people, you want, kind of. And then he said, no, it's now. Now we have to do this. And he started inspiring them and chanting and this and that. He was preaching to them. So all the children changed. And the teachers, these demonic teachers, they were noticing, there's something going on here, Just like Keshava told us the other day when we were in the program. He said that he's learning how to teach people to drive. Fahrlehrer. Yeah. Yeah. He's learning this. This is really his profession. Anyway, so he said he's going to this school where the people learn this, and there's the guy who's always sitting on his side. So this guy noticed that he was so peaceful and so balanced, and also what he said and all that. And he asked him about it, because it was so it caught his attention. Yeah. And anyway, so then he asked him if he knew such and such, and result said Keshava knew that person. He's a Buddhist or something. And that's why Keshava said that by this they know that he is a kind of a religious person, or he's a Hare Krishna like that. Then he never told them. He didn't want to reveal it in order to maintain the peace. But they already found out, because he's different. Devotees are different. No, isn't it? They're different. And I've noticed, maybe I'm hallucinating, but whenever I see devotees amongst many karmis, I got the feeling that die leuchten. How say it? Die shine. Yeah, die shine. Isn't it? You ever? Yeah, you notice it. That same thing happened with Prabhupada. When Prabhupada was walking on the street, and the people would stare at him. What is this? Yeah. Srila Prabhupada King. Oh ja, keiner verlässt den Raum. Nobody leaves the room.